All right, so today, as we continue this series, there's an app for that. We are going to be looking at the social app. There are a lot of different ways that we connect socially, and whether it's through social media, text message, phone calls, emails, personally. We're going to look at some different levels of relationships and of ways that we can connect with one another. But before we get into that, let me ask you guys a question. Do any of y'all, I know you do, but if you're probably about 33 or so or younger, you may not know or remember, but you guys remember the TV sitcom Cheers? Yeah, right? I mean, there were a lot of very memorable characters there in that sitcom. Of course, you had Sam and Diane and that dynamic, and of course, Cliff Clavin, the postmaster. My favorite was Woody, the bartender, just because, he played the dumb role very well. But there was one character where when he walked in, everybody in the bar yelled out his name. Y'all remember who it was? Yeah, you remember, right? You knew his name. And the writers of that show and the writers of the theme song played into and realize and understand that we all have this desire to be known. And we all have this wiring, this thing that God made us, and a lot of times we can't even explain it. But we have this desire to be known. And we can, if we're not careful, we can completely isolate ourselves, we can disconnect, we cannot engage in relationship. But the reality of it is we are meant to be connected with one another and in relationship. And so today I want to walk through some of those different layers and levels of relationship, and I want to encourage some of you that have been considering and thinking, we need to get connected and engaged and expand our circle of friends, and hopefully today's an encouragement for you to do that. And we'll talk about some different ways that we have set up that you can do that, because for us and our end, we believe it's important, and so we create environments for you to be able to do that. But here's what I also know, that so much of our level of relationships is dependent on us, individually, personally. Me, I know that as deep as my relationships are, it depends on me. And my willingness to engage, or my willingness to take time and set aside or make it a priority to develop relationships. And the reality of it is that God made us and created us for relationships and to be connected. And I want to look at it, and I want to take a little bit of time, and I want to talk through three different elements and three different levels of relationships. I don't know, you can go look and you can see, and people may spread out the just to have a longer blog post or write a book about it, but really I think there are three different levels of relationship that we all engage in. And I believe those are cordial, they're casual, and they're connected. They're cordial, they're casual, and they're connected. And I think those are the three that we find ourselves in. And sometimes we wind up there not very intentionally. Other times maybe it is intentional. And sometimes it maybe is intentional with the wrong circle of people. And we'll talk through all of that. But I want to start with the cordial. Because cordial is just kind of, the video talked about, Facebook and the app and connecting with people. And what's funny is for so long, class reunions were where people kind of reconnected and caught up with everybody and, got to see what everybody's doing and their kids and see the pictures and all that. As the years have gone on, class reunions have tanked. Why? Because Facebook keeps everybody up with everybody. You don't need to go and connect and find out what so-and-so from high school's doing, because you already know, because they tell you every single day what they're doing and what they're eating and where they are and all of that. So you don't need to go to a class reunion. But on the cordial level, it's your 3,000 Facebook and Instagram friends. And some of those friends you may be more than just cordial friends with, but it's friendly. It's courteous. Maybe you comment back and forth on some of their stuff. If you see them out, you'll wave and speak and be nice if you recognize them without all the filters. And so it's a level, I struggle with that sometimes, I'm just going to be honest with you. It's a level that you're just friendly with them. And sometimes here at Heritage and at church, maybe if you're just visiting and you go somewhere else, but when you go to church, typically you sit, and I look out and I see some of you that are here regularly, you sit in pretty much the same spot every single time. And that's okay as long as a guest doesn't show up, because they get here early and they show up and they sit in your seat, you don't get mad. You just sit kind of close to where you usually sit, all right? Because if somebody comes back and says that you yelled at a guest for sitting in your seat, I'm going to yell at you. Maybe not, but I will be frustrated with you. But that Sunday morning, we have cordial relationships because many of you sit in close to the same spot. And so that means you sit by some of the same people when you come and when they come, and you see them and you're friendly and you speak, and sometimes you know their name. Sometimes it's just that one guy. And you see them out in, Lowe's or out at Reggie's or Home Depot, and you just, it's like, hey, you, right? It's, hey, man, bud. The good thing about coming to church is you can use brother, right, guys? It's like, hey, brother. That way they know you know them from church and you both get Jesus points, right? So that's the good thing about it. But that's the cordial level of relationships. It's friendly, and you recognize one another, but that's really it. Then the next level is casual. And casual is a little bit more known than cordial. Casual, you probably have some common interests. Maybe, you share in your love for a particular sports team and, the joys of it and the sufferings of it and all that. Maybe you're, casually connected to them with your kids. So often when you have kids in the house, right, you find out that your casual friends become your friend or your kids' parents because you're around them, either at the ball field or the dance studio or, school events, whatever it is. And so you get to know them a little bit, and you hang out with them some, but you don't go out of your way to hang out with them. But you have some common interests. You have some things that you share in, and maybe you know a little bit more about them. So in the event something comes up in your life, then perhaps you'll reach out to them because you know they've experienced something, or that maybe they've gone through something that you just want some advice on, or maybe you ask for prayer from them. And so you have a little bit more connection with them. We have environments, when we talk about, last week we talked about our structure and how we set up Sunday mornings to serve one and worship one. And the different ministry environments that we have around here on Sunday morning are for you to engage in relationship at that first level of casual friendships. And sometimes those go beyond, and some of you have made deeper friendships from connections and relationships you've made in serving with other people on Sunday morning. But it's a first step for some of you that maybe aren't in any kind of relationship beyond just cordial friends. And so we have that, and we have the opportunities for you all around for you to use your gifts and for you to get connected with one another in a casual relationship. But I want to spend a lot of time today talking about this next level of friendship, this next level of relationship. Because if we're not careful, we can get comfortable just having our cordial friends that we see and we recognize. And Texarkana is a community where you can go just about anywhere you go, you're going to recognize someone and you're going to be cordial with them. And you probably you would consider, and I think when we talk about the majority of our friends, they fall in that casual relationship. When you say, oh yeah, we're friends. Oh yeah, that's a friend. That they're a casual relationship. And when you see them, maybe you stop and talk a little bit more, ask how things are going, whatever it is. But you don't set aside time. You don't make it a point to spend more quality intentional time with them. But when we talk about this next level of friendship, I want to talk about being connected. Being connected. Because this is where I believe when we talk about being known, this is where you really engage in relationship with someone at a deeper level. It's where you set aside time to purposefully spend time with this person or these people. That it's important to you, that you prioritize it. Because the idea and understanding behind this level of relationship, the Greek word that we use is koinonia. And this word means intimate fellowship. Now, what I think has happened in religion and so often churches, we minimize fellowship to the fellowship hall. And we relegate it to a fifth Sunday singing and a casserole dish and a bucket of chicken. And that's our idea of fellowship. Nothing wrong with those things. I love chicken. I love good singing. But that's not really fellowship as we're talking about today. That's not koinonia. That's not intimate fellowship where you become known and you know others beyond that cordial and casual level. And if we're not careful and if we're not intentional about it, we'll discredit it and we'll discount it. And guys, look, men, for a second, I'm talking to you from experience, okay? This is like I'm preaching at you, let's talk together. We think we got it all together. We like other people to think we've got it all together. When I say we, that's me too. We don't necessarily like to have to talk about what's going on because we don't want someone else to think or know that we don't have it all figured out. But what we know is that we don't have it all figured out and that we don't have it all together. But we have a harder time making it a point and being intentional about engaging in those relationships. But so often, we have crisis that comes up in our life. We have problems. We have issues. Some are small. Some are irritations. Some are big. Some affect you in a lot of different ways. And in those moments, we strongly and sincerely desire to have those connected relationships. But if we don't lay the foundation for it before that hits, then what we'll be likely to do if we really desire that is that we'll engage in our casual relationships with our guys, and we'll step in and we'll want to start talking about all the stuff that's going on, and that freaks us guys out. We're like, hold on, dude, I don't know you like that. Like, I'll pray for you, brother. Let's ease up with all this, like, your problems and stuff. I don't come to you with my problems. You don't come to me with yours, all right? I'll pray for you. What we've got to get past is understanding and knowing that God wired us this way, and we've got to get past us resisting engaging in that to lay a foundation before the storm hits. How many of you would build a house and you wouldn't put a roof over it until the storm, the rain hits, and then you scramble and think, oh, I got to put a roof over it, the storm's here. No, you don't do that. You build the house, you lay the foundation, you put the walls up, you put the roof over your head, you establish yourself in your home, and then the storm hits and you're covered. That's how our connectedness works. And we have to lay that foundation ahead of time so that in the moments when the storms come, when the enemy attacks, when chaos happens in our lives, we have the covering of connectedness in our lives. And I want to go to the book of Job. And the book of Job really is a complicated book. And there are some elements to it that I'm not going to get into today because I believe it's a whole nother message. But I want to look at, if you're not familiar with the book, Job has some trials and some hardships that fall on him. And he loses his family. He loses everything, his wealth. He loses everything in his life. And then he becomes sick. And then he has some friends that come and they're around, and there's a lot of the chapters of Job and his friends going back and forth talking, just the friends are giving foolish instruction and wisdom and insight, and Job's coming back and he's frustrated and irritated, and Job's speaking foolishness at times, and it's back and forth and back and forth. But I want to go back and I want to look at right when tragedy strikes in Job's life. And if you've got your Bibles, you can open up to Job 4. If not, we're going to have it on the screen here for you. But I want to go to Job 4 because I want to set it up, and I want to go back because what his friends do don't just come out of the blue, and it was kind of spur of the moment, unintentional and had no depth to it. So I want to jump ahead to Job 4, and I want to look at this. Gives you some insight into their relationship and how they were connected. Job 4 says, Then Eliphaz the Temanite answered, If one ventures a word with you, will you become patient? Talking to Job. But who can refrain from speaking? He said, Behold, you have admonished many. You have strengthened weak hands. Your words have helped the tottering to stand, and you have strengthened the feeble knees. So we get an insight into Job's relationship with these guys that have come to where he is. And we see that in their relationship that Job is an encourager. He's influenced them, that he has helped them through times where his friends have felt weak. He's helped them in times where maybe they didn't have words or didn't have wisdom or insight. Job spoke truth into their life. Job was there to encourage them. So that foundation was laid. So we back up to Job chapter 2, and we see this is right after all the things happen in Job's life. All the things that Job never saw coming. Could never anticipate the depths of destruction and chaos that happened in his life. Could never imagine being in this place, and then he loses everything, and then he's got sickness. He wants to die. It's how bad it's been. And then look at what it says in Job 2, starting in 11. Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all this adversity that had come upon him, they came, each one from his own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. They made an appointment together to come to sympathize with him and comfort him. They came from their homes. They heard what had happened to Job. They didn't just send a message, hey, Job, sending good thoughts to you. Hey, we're praying for you. Let me know if there's anything that we can do for you. And I'm going to be honest, I've been guilty of that with friends in moments of things that happen in their lives. You just reach out and you say, hey, let me know if there's anything you can do. A lot of people say that. Most people aren't going to say, hey, okay, here's what I need. But his friends didn't do that. They had been connected. They had built a relationship. Job had poured into their life. They obviously had a deeper relationship than just something cordial or casual. And it says that they made an appointment, they came from where they are, and they went to Job. Now, some of you may be thinking, I don't feel like I'm very qualified to minister to people in times that things are kind of crazy and things are going on in their lives. I struggle with that too, specifically in certain losses that some of you have experienced, because I haven't experienced some of the types of loss from a death standpoint that some of you have experienced. I'm trying to connect with you today so you can know a little bit about me, because by the grace of God, I haven't walked down some of the roads that some of you have walked down. And so I struggle with adequacy and being able to minister to some of you in some of your times of loss. And God has revealed to me in many ways, in many circumstances, and through His Word, that our adequacy, Paul says this in 2 Corinthians 3, that we shouldn't think that we're sufficient in and of ourselves, but that our adequacy comes from Him. And He's equipped us to be adequate in these times of need for those with whom we are connected. And let me show you how He's equipped us. In the same way that Job's friends were equipped initially, we're equipped in the same way. Look at what he says. When they lifted up their eyes at a distance, they did not recognize him. That tells you how sick that Job was. They raised their voices and they wept. Each of them tore his robe and they threw dust over their heads towards the sky. This was just an expression of extreme grief that they felt for their friend. Now look at this. This is where I want us to understand. This is where I had to grow in my understanding of what people need so often in times where they need comfort. They sat down on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights with no one speaking a word to him, for they saw that his pain was very great. 7 days and 7 nights they sat with him and they didn't say a word. As a pastor, I feel like so often people are looking for you to give them some magic wand Bible verse that's going to make everything go away. It's going to make their sorrow and their comfort and their grief and their pain and their circumstances just disappear. There's no magic wand in here that just poof, all of it goes away. What I had to learn was that the ministry of presence is more powerful than anything I can say, because so many people are talking and saying and things are floating around that so often they don't even remember what you say, but they remember that you were there. They remember that you cared enough to set aside the busyness of your life. Whatever that looks like, whatever that is, whatever stage you're in, we're all busy on different levels. We all got stuff going on. But people remember that you set aside whatever it is that's going on in your life, and you go and you just sit there. And I'm going to be honest, I had to learn this trial and error. Because there are times when I would go and visit and sit with some of you that have lost a family member or loved one, and I didn't know what to say, so I just didn't say anything instead of saying something stupid. And I just would sit there. And through some of those experiences, some of your words encouraged me in saying, you didn't need to say anything. Just you being there meant the world to me. And my eyes began to open up, and my heart began to understand that people really don't need advice in those moments. They certainly don't need a lecture or a sermon or answers. They just need you. Here's what I also know. I can't be everywhere. Our staff can't be everywhere for everybody. Our elders can't be everywhere for everybody. As big as we are right now, as we grow and God multiplies the people that He brings in, then it's even more important for you to be connected and engaged in relationship with one another. Because if we're not careful, we get frustrated because the pastor doesn't know I'm in the hospital. Well, did you tell him and let him know? Well, no, I posted it on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook a whole lot during the week. Just let you know. Did you tell the person that sits next to you at church? Well, no, I don't have their number. I don't even remember their name. It goes back to us personally. if we don't make it a point and we aren't intentional about engaging and stepping into connected relationships, then we can isolate ourselves and we can find ourselves not having any circle of friends, of influence and connectedness when those times of trials hit. And it does fall back on our shoulders. And it is important for us. And I'm not just talking about when trials hit. I'm not just talking about when bad things happen in our lives. There's also the element of celebrating with one another when good things happen. And I mean truly celebrating with each other, understanding that God doesn't have to keep you from being blessed and keep you from Him doing a work in your life so that you can celebrate other people's victories and joy. Because we'll post something on Facebook and we'll get a whole bunch of likes. How many people really are celebrating what we're doing, or they're just being cordial and friendly? And we gain some of our validation and that celebration and what God's doing in our life by how many likes we get on social media. I'm talking about true, deep, thoughtful, heartfelt celebration of the good things that are happening in your life. Who does that? I mean, who sets aside everything that they have in their lives to come and engage and just sit when you've got things that are going on in your life? And who truly celebrates and is truly happy for you when God does something great in your life? Romans chapter 12, Paul talks about this dynamic. Look at what he says. This is talking to us as believers. He says, rejoice with those who rejoice. Celebrate the things that God's doing in other people's lives when they're celebrating and rejoicing. And weep with those who weep. Walk with them through the trials and the heartache in their lives. And if you look back on the things in your life, the circumstances, the things you've gone through, the trials that you've grieved and had to walk through, the joy and the victories that you've walked through and celebrated, I would bet if you honestly considered and you thought about those times, you're going to think of two things come to your mind. One, God's faithfulness, and two, the people that engaged in your life in those times. And that's not even biblical. That's unbelievers, the secular world, they get the connectedness of people because they'll tell you too that as they've walked through trials and hardships in their life, that there were people that were there for them in those times. But that's where my question comes into you. Who are you connected with? Not who are you friendly with, not who are you casual friends with. Who are you connected with? Because if you go into the book of Job and you look at there's about 30 chapters or so, 35 chapters, where Job and his friends are going back and forth. And it'll wear you out. You start reading it, and the friends will say some foolish things. They'll give some bad advice. They'll say some things that aren't really in line with God's character. They have this idea of who God is, and they're going back. And Job's saying, "Would y'all shut up? I know some of this." And then he says some things, and his friends come back and say, "Look, I've sat here long enough, quiet. Now I have something to say," and they say something stupid, and it just goes on. And then God finally comes in and says, "Hey, y'all be quiet. Let me reveal myself to you. Let me show you who I really am." And then for about 3 or 4 chapters there, God really, you go back and you read verses 38 through about 41 or 42 of Job is a great read for you to go back and to see who God is, how powerful God is, His omnipotence, His sovereignty, His providence, just the character and nature of God. And you see on the other side of that, Job and his friends have grown in their faith and their understanding of who God is. That's the kind of connectedness I'm talking about. You're not going to have all the answers in this book. You're not going to have all the spiritual wisdom to advise your friends or family in whatever scripture or passage or spiritual truth that you may think they need. But we're talking about connecting and engaging and intentionally stepping into these relationships so that you grow together with one another and you grow together in your faith. And if you're not intentional about it, it might happen. It might not. I mean, you can live life in isolation. It might happen. You might grow in connectedness with others, but it might happen with the wrong people. And you may get some off-the-wall foolish advice and some people that aren't really encouraging, that give you wisdom and insight of the world. But I'm talking about stepping into relationship and connectedness with other believers. Spending intimate time with them so that you can grow in your faith with one another. You can grow in your relationship with one another. And the reality of it is, I'm going to have to explain myself, but the reality of it is it may mean disconnecting from some people. Because you're spending some time with people that aren't getting you where you want to go in your marriage, in your family, in your finances, in your job, in your faith. You say, Matt, didn't Jesus hang out with sinners? Yeah, he did. So that he could reveal himself to them and share who he was, and the thing that they were looking for, he was the answer and the fulfillment of that. I'm not telling you to not be cordial and friendly and even have casual relationships with unbelievers. Stay in those relationships so that you can influence them. I'm encouraging you today to be connected at a deeper level with other believers and those who are growing in their faith, who have the mind of Christ and who the Spirit of God has been poured out into their hearts, and you can encourage one another and love one another and be there for one another. And in the times of trials, you set aside what you're doing and you just go. You don't ask, what can I do for you? You go. Times of joy and celebration, you celebrate with them. And you're truly and genuinely happy because God's doing a great work in their life. And we got to get over this idea and this thought process that if we disconnect from somebody, it's a failure. I think that's a lie of the enemy, because he wants you to stay in unhealthy relationships. Because God uses those seasons in our lives and those relationships for certain things. But sometimes staying is a failure. We have completely restructured our ministry model. Not a couple of years ago. So that we create environments for you to step into so that you can intentionally engage in relationship with one another and be connected. Yeah, we have ways that you can connect casually. And maybe that's your first step today. Maybe your first step is just finding somewhere on this campus on a Sunday morning that you're willing to give up an extra hour to connect and serve in a certain area, and you start making relationships with just a couple of people. Maybe that's your first step. But for many of you, God's already started to put in your mind and your heart the desire to want to get more deeply connected with other people, so that you're not just walking in the door, you come in, you sit down, you get up, and you walk out. And we have restructured our ministry model and established community groups where we intentionally plug you into groups to give you the avenue to be connected. And now you look on the seat there. There's this card. It's this group's card. It's close to you if you didn't sit on it. We have this event next week called Group Link. It's where we link you together with unbelievers in a group. It's next Sunday. It's next Sunday night, 5:30, right here in this auditorium. And I'm challenging you that if you are disconnected right now because stuff's been busy, I get all that. There are seasons where we've been disconnected. But in your mind, God's been working on your heart and your mind that we need to re-engage, or we need to engage in those relationships. I want to encourage you to just fill this out. And what we ask you to do is just give us 8 weeks on the front end. We don't ask you to commit long term, just 8 weeks. Just get to know these people, see if they're your kind of people. They're a bunch of weirdos, you say, nope, next time maybe. You step out, 8 weeks. At the end of 8 weeks, you say, yeah, I'd like to get to know these people a little bit more. I want to be known by these people. Fill out this card, drop it off at guest services on your way out. There's a kiosk over there across the hallway. You can just drop it there. Craig Brown, our adult ministries pastor, he'll follow up with you. He'll call, he'll reach out. There's some questions that we'll ask to coordinate timing. But I want to leave you with this. This isn't us manipulating and controlling who's in what group, because we understand we are inadequate in this process. We spend a lot of time in prayer over your card, which represents you, and the Spirit of God working circumstances and schedules and timing to place you where He wants you, because Psalm 68:6 says this: God sees the lonely in families. God sets the lonely in families. God's the one who is placing you in a circle of friends to be connected with that will become like family to you, that you'll laugh with, you'll cry with, you'll celebrate with, you'll share in sorrow and grief, and you'll be connected on a deeper level. Koinonia, not chicken and casserole. Sign up today. We believe that life is better connected, and that life change happens in the context of community. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for your word. Thank you for your people. Father, that you've equipped us in ways that we don't even understand, and in ways that you show up when we don't know what to do or what to say or any of that. Father, I thank you for your Spirit and your comfort and using us in different ways to celebrate and to share in sorrow and grief. And God, I pray for those who are here today that are right there on that edge, that are questioning or that have it on their heart. And I pray that today, Father, they take that bold step of faith and confidence that you're going to do a great work in there to lay the foundation so that when the storms hit, when the celebrations hit, Father, they're under the covering of connected relationships, and they're sharing with others who have a heart for you. We thank you and we praise you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen.